watch movies and things that are involving what we would typically expect out of D&D, that it's like, all right, I want to be able to do that. I don't take physical notes, but I sometimes take mental notes of like, all right, how was this incorporated? And either as a DM or as a player, how can I incorporate things like that into my game?
Yeah, so let's like talk about some other movies. You came up with a list of movies, and then like we can like what our takeaways are from those movies as far as like adding to your role playing. Yeah, your repertoire of role playing moves during combat.
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Dave.
Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about D&D combat, role-playing moves, with a very heavy dose of inspiration from the movies.
So moves and movies is the thing, huh?
It is our theme for today. Yeah, and I guess this was a little bit inspired by, well, you came up with the idea. What was you inspired by?
All right, so obviously if you're a fan of D&D, and not living under a rock, you're probably aware that the new D&D movie is going to be coming out. So I was like, all right, well, let's talk about some D&D-esque movies that, some things you know about, some things you might not.
Yeah, so, I mean, even just from the little bit in the trailer, we see some things like the barbarians fighting looks just looks iconic, right? And just a little bit we see, we see her do this like slam choke suplex move that's just absolutely insane. There's another scene where she takes an axe, and at first I thought it was just a magic axe, but she like dips it in lava or something when they show more of the scene, and then's like, oh yeah, and then goes to use that. I can totally see this happening. The other thing is when they had the big fight scene and the paladin is just going off, and they're like, I'm glad he's on our side.
Yeah, it's things like that when we watch movies and things that are involving what we would typically expect out of D&D, that it's like, all right, I want to be able to do that. I don't take physical notes, but I sometimes take mental notes of like, all right, how was this incorporated? And either as a DM or as a player, how can I incorporate things like that into my game?
Yeah, so let's like talk about some other movies. You came up with a list of movies, and then like we can like what our takeaways are from those movies as far as like adding to your role playing. Yeah, your repertoire of role playing moves during combat.
All right, so first and foremost, I've got to throw out the biggest, D&D-esque movie, and that's going to be Lord of the Rings. I mean, we've got, technically there's 6 movies, but I'm just going to focus on, the original trilogy. We see, throughout the whole thing, there is this essence of teamwork. And we have, literal feats and class abilities that work well with that teamwork style. And like, yeah, some things might just be a small little mechanical bump or, just like, oh, well, as a reaction, you can kind of do this. But it really shows a party working together when you've got that defensive or protective style, aiding in another, or, you've got the combat maneuver to parry and literally knock, an adversary's weapon away that's going to hit you or an ally. All right, so there's another one that the Battle Master has that allows you to trade places with an ally. So whether like they're the one that's in combat and you want to kind of get in the way, or, so that you're protecting them, or you just need to trade places so that, you can kind of do your, finishing move. There's a lot of things where it's just like, you just switch. And like those kind of things, Liam from Critical Role does really well in the current season with his, halfling battle master. So he's really showcasing that angle of that teamwork style.
Yeah, you can draw on those mechanical things. I mean, there's tons of spells you can layer and use together. If you're up high and, the warriors in the group want to jump into the middle of combat with the enemies, and maybe the wizard as a reaction cast, feather fall upon them. It's all like mechanical stuff and ways that you can work together in teamwork. And Lord of the Rings really does showcase that, as well as how everybody fights is much different. Like I was super impressed with like how they give Gimli his own style fighting, and the dwarves their own style of fighting. They did a really good job with that. Between using his battle axe and throwing hand axes and rolling and tumbling around. Compared to Legolas, who's super dexterous and nimble and all over the battlefield, and all the elves are kind of like that and fight that way, and they're kind of ridiculous. Even when they form up like the phalanx, next thing you know, the back ranks are using the front ranks to launch themselves into the midst of battle. Right? Some of that stuff is mechanical. Some of that stuff is just kind of like flavor, like your DM might just let you do. But another big takeaway for me from role playing moves in Lord of the Rings is the banter, right? They banter with each other the whole time.
Mm-hmm. That back and forth, really helps sell that these are people that, are together a lot. When we look at the entire course of Lord of the Rings, yes, we understand that the Fellowship gets broken up into smaller pieces and they move around the entire map, but, while the group is together, their interaction, completely matches and meets, who they are, and you should really have that. Now, obviously, we don't get to role play every moment because, okay, well, tonight's session is we're going to sleep for the first 4 hours. The next session, we'll do another 4. That's not as much fun. But so you have to take into account how much time you're spending with these people. What is your camaraderie? What is your relationship with everyone? Do you have a relationship like Gimli and Legolas at the beginning of the movies where, they're butting heads the entire time? Or is it more like the end where it's like, we are steadfast companions and I will literally die for you?
Well, and even that, their rivalry is still ongoing, even though they're friends, in combat, and they're counting off kills, and it's like a competition. Or when Shaggoth, is it Shaggoth? No, that's the elder being. The spider attacks Sam and Frodo, and Frodo goes down, and Sam takes up Sting and is like standing over Frodo's body and defending him, so you can role play those instances in combat to make it more interesting. What's next on your list?
So next is one of my all-time favorite movies, and this is going to be Princess Bride.
So Princess Bride, again, they showcase different fighting styles, but that's mechanical stuff, right? But it's another movie with a lot of banter. But the banter isn't with each other as much as against adversaries, right? Mm-hmm. And also, everyone that ends up working together at the end, they start off as adversaries, and a lot of them come over to Wesley's side, right, or the Dread Pirate Robert's side, but when they initially fight, there's banter between him and Andre the Giant's character. It's it's a lot different when you fight one person compared to fighting groups, and they're kind of going back and forth while fighting, and also when he fights Matoya, it's kind of like the same thing, and then they both switch hands with their swords and fight with the other. You could totally do that in D&D. It doesn't mean anything.
Now that's one of the things that I feel like the movie has actually moved beyond the book, because in the book you're kind of getting this thought pattern from both of them, and it's not the witty back and forth.
So it's not dialogue.
It's not dialogue. It's thought pattern. So at least based on my recollection, if you guys have read it, please correct me if I'm wrong. So having them do this, number one, showcases, the excellent swordsmen that they legitimately are, because they can go through all of this while still, having this entire back and forth. And to me, it's that thing that makes it, the creme de la creme, and literally the fight at the top of the Cliffs of Insanity is, in my opinion, one of the best fight scenes in any movie.
So next up we have 300. 300's interesting because it really emphasizes, one, they're soldiers, they're warriors, they have to work together, so obviously that means teamwork. But a lot of times teamwork kind of means more like mechanics, but we can look at it as another hood. The Spartans are kind of a brotherhood as well. Mm-hmm. They're a cohesion unit, so you can also role play that. Take for instance the Battle of New York from Marvel, the Avengers, and Captain America kind of takes charge of that particular opening in the fight. But that was actually handed over by Stark, because Stark is the brains, and he's like, this is kind of your expertise, and I'm going to hand it to you. And he starts ordering everybody around, and everybody just does. So you can do that. Someone could take that commander role And you can combine that Marvel moment with inspiration from 300, and have someone who's the tactical person in your D&D group be the one like giving orders and telling people what to do and coming up with the tactics in the middle of the fight. So it's role playing. It's just not mechanics.
And that thing really does allow the team to work together and have a lot of fun with it. When you really break it down, like you could have somebody who maybe they don't get along with the commander, but in battle, like, all right, this is the person in charge, and then have the aftermath of like, hey, I didn't really appreciate this, and kind of go through like what happened wrong in the encounter, whether you tie the mechanics to your role playing. Somebody rolled poor on a saving throw or an attack roll and it caused somebody to get hurt. Have fun with that kind of angle and play that style up, and it's like, all right, well, we'll just have to do better next time, and you move on.
But you can address it right during the combat, because this is about role play moves during combat, right? It's not about after, right? Like during the combat, you can be like, you can take those bad rolls and be like, great idea, Commander, this is working out excellent for us. If things like go bad, like some of the other players or the character that doesn't really agree with them can throw snark, like still doing things and cooperating in the combat. But no one says you have to be nice about it. You can't be snarky and sarcastic, and have some fun role playing moments as well. Be like, oh, I guess you didn't tell the plan to the enemy or whatever.
All right, so next we're going to move on from 300, and we're going to move into another great fighting movie, and this one is going to be Gladiator.
So Gladiator, when I think of Gladiator, you have a lot of the elements of the other things that we mentioned. There's some of the banter stuff going on, lots of teamwork, a lot of war stuff and military stuff. But Maximus, he gets and becomes a slave and ends up in the gladiator pits, and he's fighting for his freedom and also his shot to get his revenge, right? So he needs to get before the emperor, and in order to do that, he needs to get renown as a gladiator to get these opportunities. So I think of D&D combat and how you can draw from this to make it performative, because it's not good enough for him just to win his fights. He's got to make the crowds love him, and he's got to get them excited, and he's got to be not just a warrior, but a performer.
Yeah, so it's not about winning. It's winning spectacularly. He goes out and, with that first combat, it's like, oh, you won, but what did you accomplish? You did it quickly. You didn't really get everyone excited. So there's times that in order to perform, you've got to take the hits. You've got to make it look like this was a fight. If you go out and just slaughter your opponent, in the fastest time possible with as less blood as possible, you're not going to sell that. So when he busts out, I am Maximus Decimus Meridius, father of a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, it's like, dude, what is going on here? And that kind of stuff, like, you could take time, especially as like you're getting to a culmination of a story, and you could begin putting this your own little inspirational thing, into a combat when you're up against, your big bad.
Yeah, I mean, you could have your own inspirational speeches you give during battle, or quotes that you use to throw out there to get, your comrades excited, or to inspire fear or dread into your enemies. Maybe you ask your DM, can I do extra athletics and acrobatics and perform checks in order to be more flashy and more impressive and describe the stuff you're doing? Maybe they give you some kind of benefits. Maybe they don't. Maybe they give you penalties if you roll poorly, right? It could be a swinging pendulum to either side. Personally, as a GM, I would probably do that if we could do it quickly and efficiently, and it doesn't suck up too much time for the rest of the table.
Yeah, as long as it's a system that has checks and balances, or just be like, all right, I'm going for flashy. This is what I do, and like. If it's not mechanical, it just is like, well, how cool does this look? You could have a perceived thing that has some added value, whether you want to roll instead of performance, like intimidation into kind of things, I would be okay with that, because it's the same role. It's about, proficiencies and what have. So definitely there's a lot of stuff worked into that movie that you could easily incorporate into your character's moves.
So next up, we have Braveheart.
So this is another one that, kind of jumps even further back in the timeline. I put this one on the list because it has so much of that iconic things. You've got a storyline that's heavily involved. It also has some awesome, amazing, combat as well as inspirational speeches as well.
Yeah, you've got, again, it's a movie with a lot of mass combat. There is a through line of constantly William Wallace having to earn the respect of not just his enemies, but also his peers and allies, right? So, like, that is something that can be role played, and it can also be done, in combat as well, throughout your adventures.
Yeah, this is a great one for those looking to go barbarian, because I feel like this one definitely has some good barbarian ties to it.
Yeah, there's some barbarian vibes in there.
So you could definitely have some fun with that. Having to earn the respect of your allies, because like he's not noble, he doesn't have any rank at the kind of beginning. He's just the dude. And he rises up through all of the struggle and strife to kind of help save his land.
So last but not least, and one I wasn't expecting on this list, but Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is one that you put on here, and instantly I think of Wire Fu.
Yeah, this one I felt like, all right, I need to go in another direction. I need to incorporate some angles that really haven't been represented with the rest of the list. And Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, again, I grabbed some older titles, to grab some things that we might not have watched in a while, or things that people not have been thinking about. But it brings an element to the game that could really be like, all right, we want to do some epic fighting, levels, things that are so beyond the scope of typical normal people.
Yeah, like a first level 5e D&D character, basically.
Where, I feel like acrobatics and athletics would have to be incorporated, with everything that's being done, because they're so advanced in their skill.
Now, not this movie in particular, but the genre, right? Like if you go back, a lot of those movies, the Kung Fu theater movies and stuff like that, were very tropey and corny and over the top. These are all things you can totally bring into your D&D game. Like the whole your master is no good, your school is no good. Like there's lots of trash talking a lot of times, and in those movies. There's just so many things that you could take away and use it. Like it's so fun because like when they're fighting, they're describing the martial arts moves that they're doing. Which you could do. Yeah, you can make those up with your character. It doesn't matter if you're a barbarian, paladin, fighter, or rogue. Like you could just be naming your attacks.
Naming the attacks, crosses a lot of different, genres, movies, TV shows, and has a lot of fun.
But I feel like it originated.
Oh yeah,
in that genre.
I'm not trying to say where it started or contradict you. I'm just saying like it has grown, beyond that into all of these things. So having a very martial, character, that could be one of those things. And if you have particular maneuvers, whether you call it out after the die roll or before the die roll and see, whether things hit, could be a lot of fun in your playstyle.
Like maybe you're going to call out Eagle Rises, but instead it's Eagle Falls because you crit failed or something. I don't know.
And this allows you to, build out your character in a way, that is both, fun, at the table and for the actual characters themselves.
Yeah, and this could also just be a fairly easy exercise you do, when you're doing the backstory and background for your character is like, some catchphrases that you say, insults you like to hurl. If you have special moves you like to call out and describe, if flourishes or flares to your character that they have during combat. Because role-playing doesn't always have to be about talking, per se, as the character. It could be how you describe what your character does and how they interact with the world around them. In this case, in particular case, combat specifically, and maybe that list of things that you kind of have to go to grows as their adventures grow, and things kind of like happen and come up throughout your games and campaigns.
Coming up with things based off of class and race and tier of play allow you to kind of build these things up, and you could have a whole repertoire of things that are at your disposal as you get to build and play this amazing game. So you like these videos, others like it, as well as all the fantastic content you can find over at nerdarchy.com. Why not come check us out on Patreon and support us over there?
Articles like spice up your D&D combat with critical stunts.
Another great way of supporting Nerdarchy is to check out Nerdarchy the store and great products like Dark Paths Lightbound. With Lightbound, beginning down one of these dark paths leads to power, but at a perilous cost. What secrets will the blazing light of the Shimmer reveal? In this scenario, something sinister takes hold of the local clergy. The absolute certainty of what is right and good holds as much potential evil as the wickedness and embraces it, but whispers with a voice validating one already believes in to be right. Included within is an adventure scenario for 4 7th level characters. The adventure scenario, Is It All a Dream? The new magic item, the Necklace of Tongues, the new primal path, the Path of the Dreamwalker, as well as the villainous crossover, the Lord of Dead Dreams.
What about your games and your characters? Do you have go-to role-playing moves for D&D combat? Let us know down in the comments below. Share your thoughts and ideas with the rest of the Nerdarchy community.
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click on that notification bell. You know the drill.
Quick reminder, we drop new videos several times a week, so come on back. Be a better 5e druid inspired by the D&D movie trailer.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.